6.3 is solving percent problems with equations, and then 6.4 is proportions. So go ahead and write 6.3/6.4, and then solving percent problems with equations and proportions. Okay? So when it comes to solving equations, there's two ways you can do them. You can take this English sentence and set up a math sentence, which I call an equation, or you can set up a proportion. All right? So let's talk about some of the key vocabulary. Of means multiply. Is means equal. What number? We don't know, so that's our variable x. The percent is either the percent as a decimal, or sometimes we don't know it, so it's called p. And then when we do it with proportions, the amount is usually is, and the base is usually of. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these all showing you both ways. The first way I'll do it is using proportions. So using proportions is amount over base equals percent over 100. Or, remember, amount is the word is, so whatever number is close to is, he goes on top. And then remember, of is the base, so whatever's close to of is the bottom. Your percent always goes over 100. And what's nice about proportions, guys, is that if you use proportions, you don't have to change your percent to a decimal or anything. You can just put 82 there, 82 over 100. And it's already over 100, so it's already kind of changing it to a decimal. All right, so let's go ahead and do this first one, A, using, or actually, we're not even solving yet, okay? So what they said was translate each equation, or excuse me, translate each to an equation, and we'll go ahead and put proportion. And it says do not solve. So we're not solving anything yet, all right? So the first couple problems on your homework assignment is just can you translate these? Like you don't have to solve anything, can you translate them, okay? So when it comes to an equation, you have to change your percent to a decimal. So what is 16% as a decimal? 0.16, okay? 0.16. Of means to do what? Multiply. 54. Is means what? Equal. And do we know the number? No. So it's x. And you'll see this is one, and maybe even for multiplication we use a dot there. I don't know what's the best way, because you don't want x's to get confused with it. So 16% of 54 is x. And if you had to solve this, this would be really easy. Do you realize that x is already isolated? So all we'd have to do is take 0.16 times 54. How do you set it up as a proportion? So I'm going to put a big or here. A proportion will always be blank equals blank over 100. No matter what, guys, that's always the setup of the proportion, all right? So remember, it's is over of equals p over 100. Is over of equals p over 100. So what word is close to is? This guy, right? Do we know what it is? No, so that's our variable. There's the is. Over of, what's close to of? 54, so he's going to go over that. So that's is over of equals, what's our percent? 16. And then at that point, we have a proportion, which we learned how to solve in 6.1 or 6.2, where we would cross multiply, and we'd be able to solve it, okay? So let's go ahead and do B together. What percent? Do we know the percent? No, so we're going to put a P. Of means to do what? Multiply. 40 is 40. Is what equals 15. You guys just set up the equation, okay? How would we go about solving that if we needed to? We'd want to get p by itself, so what would we have to do to both sides? Divide by what? 40, right? Because we'd want to get that p by itself, so we divide both sides by 40. How do we set this up as a proportion? We're going to write or. Remember, it's blank equals blank over 100, no matter what. And it's what percent? Do we know the percent? No, so that's our variable. He goes over the 100. Of is going to be 40, but where is he going to go? On the bottom. It's is over of. And the is 15. Cross multiply and solve, and you'll get the same kind of thing that you would if you solved the equation. Let's look at C. 74% of what number is 14? 74%, what is that as a decimal? 0.74, okay. Of means what? Multiply. Do we know the number? No, so what is he? X. Is always equal, and it equals what? 14. 74% of what number is 14? And again, if we wanted to solve, we want to get x by itself, so what we'd have to do, divide by 0.74 to get x by itself. Let me write or, because we're going to do the proportion. So blank equals blank over 100. What do we know? We know 74%. Where does the percent always go? Over the 100. You got it. Of, we don't know, but of always goes on the bottom, so x is going to go down there. Is 14, where's he going to go? Up top. And again, you would cross multiply and solve. All right, last one. 2.6 is what percent of 12? Let's write the equation. We have 2.6. Is what sign? Is always equal. What percent? We don't know, so we're going to put a P. Of means multiply by 12, okay? So 2.6 is whatever P times 12 is, all right? And again, if we were going to solve, what would we do? We would divide both sides by 12, and we know our percent. I'm going to put a big or so we can do it with proportions. Blank equals blank over 100. You can always start with that. 2.6 is, notice he's close to the is, so where's he going to go? Is goes over of, so 2.6 is going to go on top. What percent? We don't know, so we don't know P. And then of 12, is goes over of, so of is going to go on the bottom. And again, you would cross multiply. Okay, so what we're going to do for, let's see, what is it? Just 2, because it's 2A through L, is we're not going to do A through L, we're going to do the left-hand side, okay? So what we're going to do over here is we're going to cross out B and D so we can do A both ways, okay? Because I'm not going to force you, when you go do the 6-3, 6-4 homework, it's not any longer, it's not double, it's like the normal length, like 20-some problems, but some are from 6-3, some are from 6-4. So it'll say, sometimes it'll say set up an equation and solve, sometimes it'll say set up a proportion and solve, but ultimately when it comes to your test, you solve it however you want, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do both ways. So let's set up the equation on these sides and the proportions on these sides, okay? So what number, do we know what that number is? No, so that's our variable. Is what? Equal. What do we have to do to 8%? We need to change it to decimal, but we get to use our calculator. So throw 8 in your calculator and divide by 100. What do you get? 0.08. Of is multiplication, 50. So what's the only thing we need to do in order to solve for x? Just multiply the two. So go ahead and take 0.08 times 50 and see what you get. You guys get 4? Okay. And that should make sense, because think about 8%. 8% is not a whole lot, so it shouldn't be close to 50, right? 4 is not very close to 50. Let's go ahead and set up our proportion. Blank equals blank over 100. Blank equals blank over 100. And start with the left-hand side. Again, guys, we're just doing A. We're not worrying about B right now. What number is? So notice he's close to is. Is goes over here, right? So we don't know him, so he's going to be X. Actually, my math lab, I think, makes you do A's for amount. Okay, I'm going to do A for an amount. That's probably my fault. Guys, we're just going to be doing A, but we're going to do it 2 different ways, okay? We're not doing B at all right? So what number? We don't know, but he's close to is, so he's our amount. 8% is going to go where? Over the 100. Of 50 is over of, so 50 is going to go on the bottom. And the reason why I'm using A is because I think that's how my math lab wants you to set up your proportion. If it's the amount that is, that goes on top, you use an A. If it's the base that you don't know, you have to use a B on the bottom, okay? So from our last test, guys, how do we solve proportions? What do we need to do? Cross multiply, okay? So we're going to take 100 times A and get 100A. Equals, what's 8 times 50? 400. And then what do we need to do to solve for A? Who's in our way right now to get A by itself? The 100, and it's multiplied, so how do you undo multiplication? Divide. So we're going to divide by 100 over here. What happens? A is the only thing that's left. But if we divide the left, we have to divide the right. What's 400 divided by 100? 4. Isn't that what we should get? Yes, okay? So realize on all of these, we should get the same answer. It's just two different ways in which you solve. And you guys choose which way you want. So like when I give you the worksheet, I'm only going to give you one worksheet. You're not going to get 6, 3, and 6, 4. So you're only going to get one, but then you get to choose which way you want to solve it. Are there any questions on either one? Okay? Again, kind of keep in mind these things. Of is multiply, is equal. What number or percent, if we don't know them, is X or B. Amount, I guess we could put A and B here too, just to kind of remind ourselves. Amount will be A, base will be B. All right, let's do the next one. Again, it's an equation, so whenever we do it the equation way, we have to always change our percent to a decimal. So what's 125 as a decimal? You got it, 1.25. Of is always what operation? Times. 16. Is always what symbol? Equal. And what number we don't know is X. So again, this is an instance where we're just going to multiply the two numbers we were given. Go ahead and do 1.25 times 16 and see what you guys get.
20.
You get 20? So, does that make sense? Yes. More than 100% means more than your number. So is 20 more than 16? Yes. What would be 50% of 16? 8. What's more than 100%? Any number bigger than 16. So that makes sense. Let's go ahead and set up the proportion, okay? So we have blank equals blank over 100 always. And again, guys, we're not doing D. We're just going to do C a different way using proportions. What do we know? We know the percent. So let's throw him where he goes. Where does he go? Over the 100. The of 16, of is the base. He goes on the bottom. And what number? Technically, you could put an X for me. I don't care, but my math is going to want you to put an A for amount and B for base. Once you have your proportion set up, what do you need to do in order to solve? Cross multiply. So we're going to have 100A equals whatever 16 times 125 is. What is that? 2,000. And then how do you solve for 2,000, or how do you solve for A? Divide by 100. So that leaves you with A here and 20 here, and that's what we want, okay? This is our unknown. So 20 is 125% of 16. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the back. Again, there's a lot going on here, but we're just not going to worry about any of these ones on this side. And we're just going to do all of them just two ways, okay? So let's look at 70% of what number is 35. So let's do it with the equation first. What do we have to do with 70%? Put them as a decimal. What is 70% as a decimal? 0.70. Of means what? Multiply. What number do we know? So what do we put? X. And what's is always? Equals. And then 35. All right, so this one's a little bit different. So this is getting back into solving equations. So we want to get X by itself, guys. What do we need to do in order to get X by itself? Divide both sides by what? 0.70. You got it. So we're going to divide by 0.70 over here to leave us with X. And we're going to divide by 0.70 over here. What do you get when you take 35 divided by 0.70? You get 50. So what does that mean? It means 70% of 50 is 35, and that makes sense. 70% is more than half, 35 is more than half, so that works. What we're going to do now is use the exact same sentence, but we're going to use it as a proportion. So remember, proportion is blank equals blank over 100. All right. When you have the percent, where does he always go? Over the 100. Of is over of. Is over of. So of, we don't know. That's going to be the bottom. They want you to use B for base. Okay. Is always on top. Is over of. Is over of. So is going to go on top, and he is 35. Okay. So now all we're going to do is cross multiply. What's B times 70? 70B. What's 35 times 100? 3,500. And then what do you need to do to get B by itself? Divide both sides by what? 70. So that's gone. So you have B equals, you guys get 50? Okay. And it should be. I mean, it's two different ways to solve the exact same equation, so we should get the same answer. 8.1 is 8.1 is 36% of what number? Let's again do our equation. So what we're going to start is left to right and do our equation. So 8.1 was just told to us. Is means what? Equal. What do we always have to do with a percent? Change it to decimal, so that will be 0.36. Of means which operation? Multiplication of what number? We don't know. Okay? So 8.1 is always equal. When we're doing the equation, guys, we always have to change our percent to a decimal. Of always means multiply. What number? We don't know, so that's our unknown. So what do we need to do to get x by itself? Divide both sides by what? By 0.36, okay? Because over here, when we divide by 0.36, we're left with x. And over here, what's great is we just throw that in our calculator. We don't have to do decimal division anymore. So what's 8.1 divided by 0.36? 22.5. What does that mean? It means 8.1 is 36% of 22.5. Okay? 8.1 is 36% of 22.5. We found that number. On the right-hand side, we're going to do the exact same equation, or excuse me, exact same problem, but using proportions. So when you do proportions, you always do blank equals blank over 100. 8.1 is close to the word is. It's always is over of. So 8.1 will go on top. 36% is the percent. Where's the percent always go? Over 100, and when you do proportions, you don't have to convert them to a decimal, because by putting them over 100, there's the conversion right there. Of what number? We don't know. So remember, it's is over of, so we don't know the bottom, but we'll put B for bottom or B for base, okay? And we have our proportion set up. So now we can just cross multiply. B times 36 will give us 36B. 8.1 times 100 will get us 810. My B looks like a 6, okay? So we want to get the B by itself. What do we need to do to both sides? Divide by what number? The 36, okay? So I'm going to divide by 36. So 36 over 36 is just 1, and I'm left with the B. But if I divide the left side by 36, I divide the right side by 36. What do you guys get? 22.5. Is that okay so far? And then these last two will just be the same idea. They just kind of switch it up on you, like what you know and what you don't know in what order. So what percent we don't know, so let's write a P, so we remember that we need to do something with it at the end. Of, 200, of means multiply, 200. Is 16, is always equal, okay? So what percent, when you don't know the percent, make it a P. Of is always multiply, 200, is always equal. And again, we want to get our variable P by itself, so what do I need to do to both sides? Divide by 200. All right, so you'll get P equals, what is 16 divided by 200? 0.08. And this is why I want to give it a different notation than just X. Like anything you don't know could be x. So we don't know the percent, it could be x. But the reason why I wrote it as a p is I want you to remember that the p always needs a p to be a percent. And right now, what is he written as? A decimal. So just like when we wrote it from sentence to the math equation, we had to divide by 100. When we go from the math equation to the answer, we need to multiply by 100. So what is 0.08 times 100? You got it. So our percentage is really 8%. Guys, I probably would take on a test 0.08. I'd be fine with that because I know that's 8% to me. My math lab is looking for an actual percentage, and 0.08 is not the percent. 0.08 is the decimal form of the percent. So don't forget, whenever you deal with equations, you have to do something to that percent. So if you were given the percent, you had to change it to a decimal. Or if you found the decimal percent, you have to change it back to a percent, okay? So that's why people tend to go the proportion route, because you don't have to remember the conversion, because no matter what, your answer will pop out like you want it, okay? So watch what happens over here. So we have the proportions blank equals blank over 100. It's always is over of, okay? So let's say, what percent? Do we know the percent? No, so that's P. So he goes over 100. Of 200, he's closest to of, so is goes over of, so 200 goes down here. And then is 16, okay? So we have amount over base equals P over 100. Go ahead and cross multiply. You get 200P equals 16 times 100, but what's that going to be? 1600. And then what's your last thing you need to do in order to get P by itself? Divide by 200. You got it. And when you do that, what do you get? 8. So notice how it's as you want it. Like we don't have to do anything once it pops out except for remember to put the percent sign behind it. So that's kind of, I tend to go the proportion route. Just that way I never have to forget when do I or when don't I divide or multiply by 100. All right, last one, guys. We have 210. So 210 is, so equal, what percent? I don't know, so let's put a P there, of 60. So we'll put that right here. 210 is what percent of 60? So 210 is always equal. We don't know the percent, so it's P. Of is always multiply, and then 60 is 60. So we want to get P by itself. What do we need to do? Divide by 60. Over here, they'll cross out to leave you with P. What's 210 over 60? 3.5. But that's not the answer we want. What do we want to have to do to it? Multiply it by 100, okay? So P is really 350%. And that makes sense because how does 210 compare to 60? It's more than double. It's more than triple, right? And so since 210 is more than triple 60, notice our answer is more than triple 100. It's 350%. All right, last one. Blank equals blank over 100. 210 is close to is. It's always is over of. So 210 goes on top. What percent? We don't know. So that's the P. Of 60, it's is over of. So the 60 is going to go on the bottom. Is that all right? You cross multiply, and what are you going to have? 60P. Cross multiply, and you'll have 21,000. And then what do you have to do after you do that? Divide both sides by what? 60. Over here, they'll cross out to give you P. Over here, what's 21,000 divided by 60? 350, exactly how you want it.